Tomorrow morning, before your first sip of coffee, you're going to try something most people would never dare, dropping a single clove into your cup. It sounds harmless, almost pointless, but within minutes something shifts. Your body reacts in ways that feel subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. You might notice a change you can't quite explain, a sensation that raises questions you weren't expecting. Why does this happen? And more importantly, why isn't anyone talking about it? Stay with me, because what unfolds in the next 15 minutes could change how you look at your daily coffee ritual forever. Clove and coffee, an unusual combination that's quietly gaining attention. Today, we explore what really happens when you mix them and why the effects may surprise you. When you drop a single clove into your coffee, it may seem like a simple flavor experiment, but beneath that surface, a subtle chemical interaction begins almost immediately. Coffee itself is already a complex beverage, containing hundreds of bioactive compounds, including caffeine, chlorogenic acids, and antioxidants. Clove, on the other hand, is rich in a powerful compound called eugenol, known for its strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. When these two elements combine, they don't just coexist, they interact. As the hot coffee extracts oils from the clove, eugenol is released into the liquid. Heat acts as a catalyst here, accelerating the infusion process and allowing this compound to blend with coffee's natural acids and caffeine content. This creates a unique biochemical profile that your body doesn't typically encounter in a standard cup of coffee. The result is not dramatic in appearance, but internally it's a different story. One of the most interesting aspects of this combination is how it may influence oxidative stress in the body. Coffee alone is already a significant source of antioxidants, but adding clove can amplify this effect. The interaction between chlorogenic acids in coffee and eugenol in clove may enhance the overall antioxidant capacity of the drink. This means your body could be getting a stronger defense against free radicals within minutes of consumption. But here's where it gets more intriguing. The presence of clove may also subtly alter how your body processes caffeine. While caffeine is known for its stimulating effect on the central nervous system, eugenol has mild calming and balancing properties. This creates a kind of push-and-pull effect where stimulation and relaxation are happening simultaneously. For some people, this can feel like a smoother, more stable energy boost, without the usual jitteriness that coffee sometimes causes. There's also a sensory dimension to consider. Clove has a warm, slightly numbing characteristic due to its natural compounds. When infused in coffee, it can slightly dull bitterness while enhancing perceived sweetness and depth. This isn't just about taste, it can influence how your brain interprets the drink. The altered flavor profile may signal a different response in your nervous system, subtly changing your perception of satisfaction and alertness. Another overlooked factor is how this combination interacts with your digestive system. Coffee is naturally acidic and can sometimes irritate the stomach lining, especially when consumed on an empty stomach. Clove, however, has traditionally been used to support digestion. When combined, the clove may help buffer some of coffee's harsher effects, potentially making the drink feel gentler on your stomach. This doesn't happen in a dramatic or obvious way, but rather as a quiet adjustment that your body registers over time. What makes this reaction hidden is that none of these processes are immediately visible. You won't see a color change or dramatic fizz. Instead, the changes occur at a molecular level, affecting how compounds are absorbed, how your body responds, and how your brain interprets the experience. Within about 15 minutes, these subtle shifts begin to influence how you feel, even if you can't fully explain why. Most coffee drinkers go their entire lives without experimenting beyond sugar or milk. But this simple addition introduces a layered interaction that challenges the idea of coffee as a static, predictable drink. It becomes something more dynamic, something that can be tweaked, enhanced, and even transformed with a single, overlooked ingredient. The reason you may start noticing changes so quickly after adding a clove to your coffee comes down to how fast your body absorbs and reacts to certain compounds, especially on an empty or semi-empty stomach. Coffee is already known for its rapid onset. Caffeine begins entering your bloodstream within minutes, typically peaking in effectiveness around 15 to 45 minutes. But when you introduce clove into the mix, you're not just speeding things up, you're subtly changing the entire response pattern. As you take your first few sips, caffeine is quickly absorbed through the lining of your stomach and small intestine. Almost simultaneously, the warm liquid has already extracted active compounds from the clove, including eugenol and other volatile oils. These compounds don't require long digestion, they're bioavailable, meaning your body can start using them almost immediately. This creates a kind of dual action effect, stimulation from caffeine and modulation from clove happening at the same time. Within the first 10 to 15 minutes, caffeine begins to block adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is the chemical responsible for making you feel tired. When it's blocked, you start to feel more alert, more awake. That's the classic coffee effect. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Clove's compounds may influence how intense or smooth that alertness feels. Eugenol has been studied for its mild soothing and stabilizing properties. While it's not a sedative, it interacts with the body in a way that can reduce feelings of internal tension. So instead of a sharp spike in energy, which some people experience as jitters or restlessness, you may feel a more controlled rise in alertness. It's as if your body is receiving the signal to wake up, but without the usual rush that can sometimes feel overwhelming. At the same time, your digestive system is reacting. Coffee naturally stimulates gastric acid production, which is why some people feel a strong kick in their stomach shortly after drinking it. Clove, however, has traditionally been associated with digestive comfort. Its compounds can support enzyme activity and may help reduce minor irritation. Within minutes, this combination can lead to a noticeably different sensation in your gut, less harsh, more balanced, and in some cases, more comfortable. There's also a neurological component that often goes unnoticed. The aroma of clove, when released into hot coffee, travels through your olfactory system, the part of your brain connected to smell. This system is directly linked to areas responsible for mood and memory, so even before the compounds fully circulate in your bloodstream, your brain is already responding to the scent. This can subtly influence how you feel, potentially making the experience more calming or grounding compared to plain coffee. Another factor is blood circulation. Both coffee and clove contain compounds that may influence blood flow. As circulation increases, oxygen and nutrients are delivered more efficiently throughout the body. Within that 15-minute window, this can contribute to a feeling of lightness, warmth, or increased mental clarity. Again, it's not dramatic, but it's noticeable if you're paying attention. What makes this rapid response so fascinating is that it's not driven by a single ingredient, it's the interaction between them. Coffee alone stimulates, clove alone soothes and supports, but together they create a layered effect that your body processes in real time. That's why the change doesn't feel extreme. It feels different, and that difference is what catches people off guard. You're not just waking up, you're experiencing a slightly altered version of alertness, digestion, and focus, all within the first 15 minutes of your day. Mixing clove with coffee doesn't just tweak the flavor, it creates a combination that sits right on the edge of benefit and debate, especially when it comes to digestion and energy. On one hand, you have coffee, a well-known stimulant that jumpstarts your system, increases alertness, and triggers digestive activity. On the other, clove has a long history in traditional practices for soothing the gut and supporting digestive balance. When these two collide, the result isn't straightforward, and that's where the controversy begins. Let's start with digestion. Coffee naturally increases gastric acid production. For some people, this is helpful. It gets the digestive system moving, promotes bowel activity, and creates that familiar morning reset. But for others, especially those with sensitive stomachs, it can feel too aggressive, leading to discomfort, acidity, or even mild irritation. Now, when you introduce clove into that equation, things shift. Clove contains compounds that may help relax the digestive tract and support enzyme function. In theory, this could counterbalance coffee's harshness, making the drink feel smoother and less irritating. Some people report that their stomach feels calmer, with less of the sharp, acidic sensation that coffee alone can bring. This is where supporters of the combination make bold claims that clove fixes a coffee's digestive downsides. But not everyone agrees. Critics argue that combining a stimulant with a compound that has soothing properties can send mixed signals to the body. Instead of a clear digestive response, your system may receive conflicting cues, one pushing for rapid activity, the other encouraging balance and slowing things down. For certain individuals, this could result in unpredictable effects like bloating, delayed digestion, or a feeling that something is off, even if it's hard to describe. Then there's the energy factor, which is just as debated. Coffee is famous for delivering a quick surge of energy, but that surge can sometimes come with a crash. The spike in alertness is often followed by a dip, leaving you feeling drained a few hours later. Clove enters this dynamic in a subtle but potentially important way. Because of its stabilizing properties, clove may influence how your body experiences that caffeine boost. Instead of a sharp rise and fall, some people feel a more gradual increase in energy, less intense but more sustained. This has led to claims that clove smooths out caffeine's effects, reducing jitters and preventing crashes. For those who struggle with anxiety or restlessness after coffee, this can feel like a significant improvement. However, here's where the controversy deepens. Not everyone wants a smoothed energy boost. Some rely on that strong, immediate jolt of caffeine to kickstart their day. By softening that effect, clove could make coffee feel less powerful, almost diluted in its impact. In other words, what feels balanced to one person might feel weakened to another. There's also the question of tolerance. Regular coffee drinkers often build a certain level of resistance to caffeine over time. Adding clove may alter how that caffeine is perceived, potentially changing the body's PREVYR response. This can be positive, breaking the cycle of dependency on stronger doses, but it can also feel unfamiliar and even frustrating for those who expect a consistent effect from their daily cup. What makes this combination truly controversial is that it doesn't produce a universal outcome. It's highly individual. Your digestion, your sensitivity to caffeine, your overall health, all of these factors influence how your body reacts. For some, it's a game changer. For others, it's unnecessary or even uncomfortable. And that's the key point. This isn't a guaranteed upgrade to your coffee. It's an experiment. One that challenges the idea that more stimulation is always better and raises the question of whether balance, even if it feels different, might actually be more beneficial in the long run. The idea of adding clove to coffee sounds simple, almost too basic to attract serious attention, but that's exactly why it lives in a gray area. It's not controversial enough to be widely debated in mainstream discussions, yet it's not common enough to be fully studied or officially recommended. And this is where things get interesting. What you don't hear from experts is often just as important as what you do. Most health professionals tend to stay cautious when it comes to combinations like this. Not because they're dangerous in normal amounts, but because they fall into a category that lacks large-scale, controlled research. Coffee has been extensively studied. Clove, too, has a solid background in traditional use and emerging scientific interest. But the specific interaction between the two, that's where the data becomes thin, and without strong evidence, experts avoid making bold public claims. Privately, however, many acknowledge something important. Both coffee and clove contain potent bioactive compounds that can influence the body in real ways. Caffeine affects the central nervous system, heart rate, and hormone levels. Clove's eugenol has antioxidant, antimicrobial, and mild analgesic properties. When you combine two active substances, even in small amounts, you're creating a layered effect that isn't always predictable. This unpredictability is one reason experts don't openly promote such habits. The human body is incredibly variable. What feels smooth and beneficial to one person could feel uncomfortable or overstimulating to another. Public health advice is usually designed for broad safety and consistency, not for personalized experimentation. So, instead of endorsing niche combinations, professionals stick to general guidelines: moderate caffeine intake, balanced diet, and awareness of individual sensitivity. There's also a subtle industry factor at play. Coffee culture, especially in its commercial form, is built around consistency, same taste, same effect, same expectation every day. Introducing something like clove disrupts that uniformity. It changes flavor, alters the sensory experience, and potentially modifies how the drink affects the body. While this isn't inherently negative, it moves away from standardized consumption and into personal customization, something large-scale messaging rarely focuses on. Another point rarely discussed openly is dosage awareness. A single clove in coffee is generally mild, but cloves are highly concentrated. In larger amounts, their compounds can become intense, even irritating for some people. Experts know that small changes in quantity can shift the experience significantly. But instead of diving into specifics for every possible variation, they often choose silence over complexity, leaving these nuances unexplored in public conversations. There's also the question of expectation versus reality. Online trends often exaggerate results, promising dramatic effects within minutes. Experts are typically skeptical of such claims, not because there's zero effect, but because the human body rarely responds in extreme, one-size-fits-all ways. The real impact of adding clove to coffee is more subtle, more gradual, and highly dependent on context. Your metabolism, your diet, your tolerance levels, and even your mindset. What many professionals would quietly agree on is this: experimenting with small, natural additions like clove isn't inherently harmful for most people, as long as it's done with awareness and moderation, but they would also emphasize that it's not a miracle shortcut, nor a guaranteed upgrade. It's simply a variation, one that may offer benefits or may just change your experience without any significant long-term impact. So the silence isn't about secrecy, it's about caution. Experts don't publicly hype what hasn't been fully proven, and they avoid simplifying something that's actually quite complex. That leaves room for curiosity, for personal testing, and for observations that don't always fit neatly into standard advice. In the end, this combination sits in a space between tradition, science, and individual experience. And sometimes, what isn't loudly endorsed is exactly what invites you to pay closer attention and decide for yourself.